What if I told you the real monsters aren't outside? They're trapped in here with us. Lock your doors, check your windows, and whatever you do, don't answer that knock. You're about to hear 3 terrifying true stories from the darkest days of lockdown. But remember, once you start listening, there's no turning back. Are you brave enough to face the horrors that lurk within these walls? Hey there, brave souls. Welcome back to Midnight Murmurs. Tonight, we're diving deep into the shadows of recent history. The global lockdowns forced us all indoors, but for some unfortunate souls, home became a prison of terror. Before we begin, make sure you're somewhere safe. These stories aren't for the faint of heart. If you dare to continue, hit that like button and get ready to face your fears. Now, let me ask you something. During those long, isolated days of lockdown, did you ever feel not quite alone? Did you ever catch a glimpse of something in the mirror that wasn't quite you? Or hear a sound that couldn't be explained? If you did, you're not alone. The stories you're about to hear are all true. Names and some details have been changed to protect the victims. But the horror, that's all too real. Remember, in times of crisis, the monsters that walk among us don't disappear. They adapt, they evolve, and sometimes they thrive. Are you ready to face the darkness? Let's begin. Sarah had always been a loner, but the lockdown pushed her further into isolation. Her tiny studio apartment became her entire world. At first, she embraced the solitude, filling her days with books, music, and endless scrolling through social media. But as weeks turned to months, something changed. It started with small noises, creaks and scratches she'd never noticed before. Sarah told herself it was just the building settling, but deep down, she knew better. The sounds were too deliberate. One night, as she lay in bed scrolling through her phone, Sarah heard a faint tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. It seemed to be coming from inside her wall. She froze, hardly daring to breathe. The tapping stopped, then started again, more insistent this time. Sarah convinced herself it was just a pipe, or maybe a mouse. But over the next few days, the tapping became more frequent. It would start randomly, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes while she was working, always from different parts of the apartment. Then came the shadows, quick movements at the corner of her eye, a figure darting past her bedroom door in the middle of the night. Sarah's heart raced every time, but when she looked, there was never anything there. One afternoon, while on a video call with her mother, Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. As she chatted, a pale, elongated hand slowly reached out from behind her closet door. It seemed to be reaching for her. Sarah screamed and spun around, but there was nothing there. Her mother, alarmed, asked what was wrong. When Sarah tried to explain, her mom suggested she was just stressed from being cooped up for so long. Have you ever seen something out of the corner of your eye that wasn't there when you turned to look? Share your experiences in the comments. The incidents escalated. Sarah would wake up to find her belongings rearranged. She'd hear whispers coming from empty rooms. Once she even found a handprint on her bathroom mirror, far too large to be her own. Desperate for answers, Sarah set up her laptop to record her apartment while she slept. The next morning, with shaking hands, she reviewed the footage. For hours, nothing happened. Then, at 3:33 a.m., her bedroom door slowly opened. A dark, hunched figure crept into the room. It stood over her sleeping form for several minutes, its face always just out of frame. Then, it turned and looked directly at the camera. The screen went black. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah stared at her ceiling. That's when she saw it. A tiny pinprick of light, barely visible in the darkness. She squinted, trying to make sense of it. It looked almost like a camera lens. Sarah's blood ran cold. She scrambled out of bed, grabbing a chair to investigate. As she reached up to touch the spot, Her fingers brushed against something smooth and metallic. It was a camera, hidden in her ceiling. Panic set in. Sarah tore through her apartment, searching every nook and cranny. She found cameras everywhere, in her bathroom, her kitchen, even inside her closet. But that wasn't all. Behind a loose section of wall, she discovered a cramped space just large enough for a person to hide. Someone had been living in her walls, watching her. For how long? Sarah called the police, but they couldn't come immediately due to lockdown restrictions. She was told to leave the apartment and stay with a friend. But Sarah had nowhere to go. As she sat huddled in a corner, paralyzed with fear, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I see you found my eyes and my home. Don't worry, I'll be there soon to introduce myself properly. After all, we've been living together for so long. It's time we met face to face." Sarah's story serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers lurk within our own four walls. But our next tale proves that technology isn't the only way for evil to infiltrate our homes. Mark was grateful for the army of delivery drivers keeping everyone supplied during lockdown. He tipped generously and always left a kind note with his orders. One rainy Tuesday, Mark's doorbell rang. Another package had arrived. He opened the door, ready with his usual friendly greeting, but the words died in his throat. The delivery man stood motionless, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. Something about his posture seemed off, unnatural. "Hello?" Mark called out nervously. The figure's head snapped up. Mark stumbled backward. The delivery man's eyes were pitch black, his skin an unnatural shade of gray. A wide, too wide smile split his face. "Special delivery," the thing rasped, its voice like gravel. It thrust a package into Mark's hands and shambled away, movements jerky and wrong. Mark slammed the door shut, heart pounding. He stared at the unmarked box in his trembling hands. He hadn't ordered anything recently. Against his better judgment, Mark opened the package. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Written in what looked disturbingly like dried blood were the words, "I'm coming back for you." For weeks afterward, Mark was plagued by nightmares of that grotesque delivery man. He'd wake in a cold sweat, certain he'd heard scratching at his door. Packages kept arriving, always unlabeled, always containing cryptic, threatening messages. "I'm getting closer. I can smell your fear. Soon, we'll be together forever." Mark begged the police for help, but they dismissed his fears as pandemic-induced paranoia. They suggested he stop ordering deliveries for a while, but the packages didn't stop. They began to contain more than just notes. A lock of hair that looked disturbingly like Mark's own. A tooth, a finger, thankfully not his. Mark installed security cameras, but they would mysteriously shut off just before each delivery. He tried staying awake to catch the delivery man, but would always fall into a deep, unnatural sleep moments before the doorbell rang. His mental health deteriorated. Mark became a prisoner in his own home, too terrified to leave even as the walls seemed to close in around him. Then came the night Mark woke to find muddy footprints leading from his front door to his bedroom. On his nightstand sat a final box. With shaking hands, he opened it. Inside was a mirror shard. When Mark looked into it, he saw not his own reflection, but the grinning face of the delivery man. As he watched in horror, the thing in the mirror began to reach out. Mark screamed and dropped the mirror. But when he looked down, the broken pieces showed only his own terrified face. Suddenly, his phone pinged, a notification from his delivery app. "Your package has been delivered. Thank you for inviting me in." The doorbell rang. "What's the creepiest delivery experience you've ever had? Let me know in the comments." Mark's story reminds us that in our interconnected world, danger can arrive right at our doorstep. But sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are the ones we invite into our lives. Emma was struggling with loneliness during lockdown. Her roommate had left the city to stay with family, leaving Emma alone in their small apartment. One night, scrolling through a local message board, Emma saw a post that caught her eye. Someone named Alex was looking for a place to stay. They'd lost their job due to the pandemic and were about to be evicted. Emma's heart went out to Alex. Without thinking too much about it, she offered her spare room. Alex accepted gratefully, promising to move in the next day. When Alex arrived, Emma was immediately uneasy. There was something off about them. Their smile never quite reached their eyes, and they had an intense, almost predatory way of looking at Emma. But Emma pushed her doubts aside. These were strange times, after all. Everyone was on edge. As days passed, Emma's unease grew. Small things at first. Food missing from the fridge, the feeling of being watched while she slept. One morning, Emma woke to find Alex standing at the foot of her bed, just staring. "Oh, I'm sorry," Alex said with that not quite right smile. "I thought I heard you calling out in your sleep. You seemed distressed." Emma tried to set boundaries, but Alex always had an excuse. They were just lonely, confused. Didn't mean to make her uncomfortable. Then Emma started noticing other changes. Her things rearranged, clothes she didn't recognize in the laundry, and most disturbingly, photos of herself she hadn't taken appearing on her own phone. One evening, Emma came home to find Alex wearing her favorite dress. When confronted, Alex acted confused. "But this is my dress," they insisted. "I've always had it." Emma's reality began to warp. Alex would gasp light objects as if they were incredibly heavy, then lift furniture with inhuman ease. They'd speak in voices that didn't sound like their own, then claim Emma was mishearing things. Friends Emma video called became concerned. "Who's that behind you?" they'd ask. But when Emma turned around, Alex was nowhere to be seen. One night, Emma woke to Alex whispering in her ear, "You're so beautiful when you sleep. I can't wait until we're together forever." Terrified, Emma locked herself in the bathroom and called the police. When they arrived, Alex was gone. So were most of Emma's possessions. The police investigation revealed the chilling truth. There was no record of an Alex matching their description. The photos Emma had seen of them online had been digitally altered, but the true horror was yet to come. As Emma gave her statement to the police, one officer glanced at his partner with a worried look. "Miss," he said gently, "we found no evidence that anyone else has been living here. The neighbors say they've only ever seen you entering and leaving the apartment." Emma's blood ran cold. "But that's impossible," she stammered. "Alex has been here for weeks. They were just here." The officer shook his head. "I'm sorry, but according to our records, you've been living alone for months. There's no sign of forced entry, and all the food in the fridge, it seems to be portioned for one person." As the implications sank in, Emma's world spun. Had she imagined it all? But then, whose clothes were those in her closet? Who had taken those photos? Emma's phone buzzed with a new message from her own number. "You didn't really think you could get rid of me that easily, did you? Don't worry, I'll always be a part of you. See you soon, roomie, whoever, or whatever." Emma had invited into her home. It hadn't been human, and it was still out there, somewhere, wearing her clothes, living her life, and waiting to return. Have you ever had a creepy roommate experience? Share your stories in the comments below. And there you have it, brave listeners. 3 true tales of lockdown terror that will haunt your dreams. Remember, the world can be a dangerous place, but sometimes the greatest horrors are the ones we let in ourselves. Always trust your instincts and be careful who or what you invite into your life. These stories remind us that even in our most private spaces, darkness can find a way in. The cameras watching from hidden corners, the malevolent entities masquerading as helpful strangers, the fractured psyches that blur the lines between reality and nightmare. As we emerge from the shadow of lockdown, let these tales serve as a warning. The monsters didn't disappear during our isolation. They evolved, adapted, and in some cases, thrived. So the next time you hear an unexplained noise in your home, or catch a glimpse of something that shouldn't be there, remember these stories and ask yourself, are you really alone? If you enjoyed these spine-chilling tales, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe For more terrifying content, hit that notification bell to never miss an upload. And if you have your own lockdown horror story, share it in the comments below. Who knows, your experience might be featured in our next video. Until then, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, just because you're home alone doesn't mean you're really alone. Sleep tight and don't let the bedbugs bite, or worse,